Hello everyone, and I think this is the first time that I've spoken or done a live since we've been in this situation where, the situation that's escalated globally in terms of the coronavirus and the fact that we're all probably living very different lives and a very different experience day to day than we may have anticipated or even thought about were even possible. So I know we're in rapidly changing times. I'm here in the UK, and certainly over time there's been a narrowing of what we can do as individuals. Now, for some of us who work at home, that may not be such a big shift, but when you're doing it all the time, that puts a very different lens on things. And again, we're in the situation here in the UK where kids are more or less being homeschooled. We're allowed to go out and exercise, but maybe once for 1 hour a day. So we've kind of got to that stage where we're spending a lot of our time in ways that we didn't expect, maybe looking after relatives around the clock, as well as working from home. Some of us may still be having to go into work and feeling concerned about that if we are in particular key roles in society. And so who could have imagined what we're going through now? But what I wanted to do tonight is really cover something that I touched on a few weeks ago. And this is all about thoughts and beliefs and how you can choose between disempowering thoughts and empowering thoughts. And you may well be thinking, how on earth is that possible during these times that we could never have imagined, where we're actually have less liberty in certain regards than we used to, but it is still possible to have a choice and make some decisions about the way we think and what we believe about ourselves, even though I appreciate these are in very challenging times for many of us and we may be worried about certain things. But what I will say, as I've said in many of my videos, even though I believe in positive thinking on the upside, I'd be a liar if I said I haven't had my moments with what's going on for me, my family and my friends. That simply isn't realistic. It isn't realistic to think when we're going to have moments where we just need to maybe not ruminate. Ruminate means sort of sitting there and dwelling on something endlessly, but sometimes we just need to touch in and go, actually, do you know what, I'm not feeling so good. But as long as we're saying I'm not feeling so good now, but I'll make a decision to do something to help shift my energy, if you're allowed to sort of just get some fresh air out the window in your garden, or do some exercise and find some routines that will help you. I'm certainly finding that routines really help you, and starting something and finishing something really gives me a lot of satisfaction. So it's those smaller tips and tools that I often share with you that will come into play. But I do appreciate that for many of us it's a bit of an evolving feast, and we're not always quite sure how we're going to feel from 1 minute to the next. But hopefully over time, I think human beings have a great capability to adapt and adjust to what's going on. And I hope that some of the tips I share with you tonight about disempowering thoughts and empowering thoughts will help you to shift, pivot and adjust to what's happening. So if we think about our thoughts or our beliefs or what's going through our mind, the ability for us to reflect, stop and adapt those hasn't changed. Despite what's going on in the world, we still have an ability to, I don't like using the word control, but to understand them, then to master them and pivot them. And I like using that word pivot because sometimes life throws things up, especially at the moment. We just have to quickly pivot like a basketball player. So we still have, despite everything that's going on, the ability to master and then shift our beliefs and thoughts. And you can go in one of two directions, possibly more, but I'm going to focus on one or two directions. Empowering. So feeling empowered, I don't know if you've ever had that feeling of being in the flow, feeling vibrant and feeling energized. And again, there are still times, even though I'm not doing the things in my life that I would usually do, I still have those moments. And whether that's from looking at silly jokes that people are sending around, whatever it is, but there are still times where you can choose those empowering decisions where you're in the flow, you're vibrant and you're energized. Or there's the other side of the coin, which is disempowered, where you feel sort of disconnected, worried, fearful for a certain amount of time. Now, I know there might be some of that going on for some of us with everything that's happening, but let's not dwell there. Let's see if we can still master our beliefs and our thoughts to make them empowering thoughts. So we're looking at thoughts, we're looking at our internal dialogue, and we need to pay attention to our feelings and understand, well, where's that feeling come from? What thoughts burn that feeling? Whether it's an empowering one, but particularly when it's a disempowering one, and it really is about that mind-body connection. Because as I so often say, thoughts become feelings that become things, they become actions. Now, the thing is, if we can change the thought, we can also adapt and shift our feelings and our behaviours. And even tonight, by me doing this video, I already feel more empowered than I might have done by just sitting at home, watching the TV, doing nothing else really. So this is about the internal dialogue, the thoughts, the feelings and the actions. So everything starts with a thought, and those lead to feelings and actions. So if we can think that a thought is just a thought, the thought is not yet a real thing. A thought has not yet got to a reaction or an action. So for example, that thought you have about, I don't know, your partner, your kids, or your relatives, or work, it's still a thought. If you can catch the thought and shift it to a more empowering thought that will just raise you up, I call it raising up the vibrational level. So you can vibrate at a higher level, so you can feel more empowered. That thought hasn't yet become a thing. You haven't actually activated it yet. So sometimes it's about becoming really clued up to the thought and the self-talk that's going through our minds. So start getting clued up. And whenever you start thinking something and you're noticing it, and it's one of those annoying thoughts that keeps whirring around in your brain, just ask yourself, is this thought disempowering or empowering? And this is about inside out leadership, living life from the inside out, from here out. Because very often what's going on in our heads translates into feelings, translates into actions, translates into the results in our lives. So this is why I'm so passionate about inside out leadership, the ability to look at ourselves and go, how can I shift? How can I work from the inside out? Because our life, very often, yes, there are things we can't control. We all know that at the moment, but there are things that we can manage. And very often, if we manage our thoughts, and if we just ask ourselves, is this an empowering thought or is it a disempowering thought? You start to get clued up about where your thoughts are going. So it's natural at times to want to slip into disempowering thoughts, but remember, keep asking yourself this question: is an empowering thought or a disempowering thought? And remember, we have the power of choice. If you can remember nothing else, remember to ask yourself that question, whether the thought is empowering or disempowering, and say to yourself, I have the power of choice. Beliefs and thoughts are not real. How can they be? All they are sort of, I don't know, cells in your brain buzzing away, or energy buzzing away in your brain, however you like to think about your thoughts. They are not real things. And the other question I want you to ask is, if this is a disempowering thought, what are the consequences of me continuing to carry on in this disempowering way? So, for example, if I carry on in this disempowering way, I may not have that open and honest conversation with my partner that I need to have, and I might sit on my frustrations and just become a victim of my frustrations. If I don't talk to my boss about what's going on at the moment, how I can volunteer, or I'm feeling excluded from projects, or I'm not sure what's happening with my role, that's potentially quite disempowering. So think about these things. Is it an empowering or disempowering thought? Remembering you have the power of choice, and asking yourself, if I carry on thinking this disempowering thought, what are the consequences? Now, whilst you're doing this, don't judge yourself, especially at the moment. We all need to show ourselves self-kindness, self-care. So don't judge and say, that was a right thought, that was a wrong thought. That's not what it's about. It's just about noticing what's going through your brain and trying to shift it. And believe you me, I've been doing this for many years. Don't get me wrong, especially at the moment, we've all probably having our moments where we might be concerned or worried, but we can stop and pivot and adjust along the way if we follow the tips that I'm talking about today. So you have the power to decide whether this thought is an empowering thought or disempowering thought, and what action, what consequence that will have on your life. Now, I've got a few general phrases that I thought about this, and I thought they're general enough that I think they could be helpful at the moment. So by all means, replay this video and write down these phrases. And I'd recommend that maybe you can just pick one that works for you or create your own phrase. I would recommend that on a daily basis, if you feel like doing it, because I know this is really difficult for some people, that you stand in front of the mirror and you say this statement at least 3 times a day. Now, if you can do it more than that, so as you're making your breakfast, as you're having a shower, as you're going about your day, if you can do them through different parts of the day and just say them out loud, then very soon what you find is your brain sort of automatically wires and remembers these phrases, and these are all empowering phrases. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few phrases that I thought might help you, particularly at the moment. I'm responsible for my day-to-day experience. So I'll repeat that. I'm responsible for my day-to-day experience. Yes, there's a lot going on in the world we can't control, but we can be somewhat responsible for how we experience every day and how we choose to live every day in a disempowering or empowering way. Failure. I learn to adapt to failure. I learn and make success from my setbacks. So that phrase is all about failure, which I think there's loads of different acronyms for it. It's another opportunity to learn. I learn and adapt to my setbacks and challenges. I embrace change and challenges and will always find ways to overcome them. I love that one. I think that's a great phrase at the moment. I embrace change and challenges and will always find ways to overcome them. The next one. Vulnerability gives me strength and fuels my belief in me. Vulnerability gives me strength and fuels my belief in me. Vulnerability very often can be seen as a weakness. It's not, as a strength, because if you can step in to face up to what's going on for you and why you feel vulnerable, why you feel this way and can really face it, it's a very strong, empowering thing to do. Here's the next phrase for you. The past is who I was, the present is who I am, the future is who I become. The past is who I was, the present is who I am, and the future is who I choose to become. The next phrase for you. I use words aligned to my beliefs, values, and action. So I'm hoping that many of you have got positive, empowering values such as fun, laughter, family, friends, care. I use words aligned to beliefs, values, and actions. This might be a very good one at the moment, because I know that many of us are looking with the spare time that we have at courses, listening to webinars, educating ourselves. I am committed to continually learning and improving. I am committed to continually learning and improving. The next one. I make mistakes, but I learn from them and improve. I make mistakes, but I learn from them and I improve. Or actually, I might rephrase that. I have made mistakes, but I learn from them and improve, because we don't want to embed the fact that we make mistakes. I never stop trying to be the best person I can be. And I think that really resonates at the moment, because there's so many people in our society that need help and support. I never stop trying to be the best person that I can be. And this one, let's not forget our dreams. Whilst at the moment there are many things that perhaps we can't live our lives in the way that we ideally would want to, but let's not let go of our dreams. Let's remember our dreams and prepare for the time when we can access everything we've been able to access in the past. I dream big. I dream big. There's nothing like visioning and thinking about your future to empower you. So I would say for at least 10 days, choose one of those statements or find your own positive statement with as many positive words as you can that would empower you, so that you sort of feel, gosh, do you know what? Just by saying those, I feel better. Choose one or choose more than one, or write your own and say them at least 3 times a day in front of the mirror if you can. So that's something we can do even now. So just to recap what I've covered tonight, whilst everything in the world is very different to how it was a couple of months ago, we can still make a choice about our thoughts, whether they are empowering or disempowering. And we can go in 2 directions. We can go down a rat run, or we can continue on the path that we're on. And it might be a bit windy, but we can continue on that path into thinking about what it is we do want. You'll know when you have an empowering thought because you'll feel in the flow, kind of, yeah, I've got this, I can deal with this. When you've got a disempowering thought, you will feel disconnected and worried, and you know that feeling where you're just like this all the time. So there's 2 paths you can go down, empowered or disempowered, and we can still do that now. The first thing to do is become aware of your thoughts and ask yourself this question: am I thinking about an empowering thought or a disempowering thought? And if you realise it's a disempowering thought that's making you feel a bit low, a bit less than, ask yourself, what is the consequence of me continuing to think this disempowering thought? And remember, this isn't about judging yourself. It's not saying that you're thinking right or thinking wrong. We all have those mixture of thoughts. It's about asking yourself that question: am I thinking in an empowering or disempowering way? What's the consequence if I continue to think in a disempowering way? What impact will it have on my life? And this is becoming self-aware. And particularly at times when we might be at home more, it's really important to have that self-awareness. But let's not judge ourselves. And remember that thoughts and beliefs, they are not things, they are not real things. And that thoughts go to feelings, that go to actions, that lead to our results in life. They're not real things, they're just here in our mind, and we can shift them if we make the effort. And then I've given you a few phrases. I've given you about 8 or 9 phrases that are just general empowering phrases. And as I say, I'd recommend that you would listen, read them out loud, say them out loud to yourself, say them 3 times a day. Choose one, choose more, or write your own empowering statement and say them as much as you can throughout the day. But if you can do them 3 times a day over 10 days, that's a really, really good start. And you'll start to find that this becomes embedded programming in you. And this is something we can do even now while everything else is going on. So I hope that this has been a useful video tonight. I thought it was an important topic to cover. I did touch on it last week. I think I did touch on uncertainty and change last week. So I'll carry on doing these videos. Obviously, if you've got ideas or suggestions that you want to send through to me on a topic that you think, do you know what, this is something I'd really like you to cover at the moment, then please leave me a comment in the comments box or send me a direct message. And if you have got some statements, empowering statements that you think, how does this sound? Does this sound empowering? I mean, it has to sound empowering to you, but I can maybe help you phrase some of those statements. Or if you've got a disempowering thought and you're like, do you know what, I just don't know how to say this in a way that's empowering me, then please do send me a direct message on Facebook. I'd be more than happy to look at what you've written and give you some feedback. But remember, there's a lot going on in the world, but we can still choose that there's 2 directions, disempowering and empowering. And I think at the moment, whatever we can do to choose those empowering thoughts, or at least become more aware of what we're thinking and stop and pivot and choose a different path, is going to be really, really good for our own mental health at the moment. All right then, well, enjoy the rest of your day and evening. Bye.